Hey, what's up guys? In this video, we're going to be covering how Alex Hormozi used his consulting business and spun it out into a tech product, adding $20 million in annual recurring revenue within the first 6 months, as well as adding $120 million in their valuation within 2 years. Without even knowing it, Alex Hormozi followed the same playbook that over 10 agencies used to save their business from environmental pressures like rising employee costs, AI commoditization, etc., and made them untouchable by other agencies in their niche. It made them a one of one, and it also 10x the value of their business and also made them financially free and able to retire. But we know Alex Hormozi doesn't want to retire yet. We're also going to be covering the mistakes that they made and how it could have avoided them $2.5 million as well as months of their time. Oh, and this wouldn't be an Alex Hormozi video if I wasn't wearing a tank top and didn't have snooze with me. Let's get into it.
Which was the steepest learning curve?
Software. With software, I knew how to acquire the customers. We knew how to build the team, but I'm not a code guy. And the mistake that I made when I was building Allen.
So before I get into the tech product part of this, I want to go a bit into the backstory of Gym Launch, their consulting business. Gym Launch was founded by Alex and Layla Hormozi, along with, they had a partner called Tim Callis, and he essentially was the person that ended up leading Allen, the tech product. In Gym Launch, he was the VP of Business Development. So Gym Launch, in case you don't know, is a consultancy and licensing business, and it specializes in turning around and scaling brick and mortar gyms. In 2016, they founded the business. A year after that, they scaled it to $7 million a year. A year after that, they scaled it to $26 million a year. And just a year after that, they scaled it to $30 million a year, which is insane. Over this time, they accumulated 4,500 gym locations as their clients, and they operated around a 40 to 60% profit margin. In this video, I'm going to be covering how you can evolve from an agency to a SaaS agency model, but I'll highlight exactly when there's a difference between a consultancy and an agency. For example, an agency doesn't typically operate around a 40 to 60% profit margins. Usually the average is about 20 to 30%. So that's the first difference. Most people don't know this, but Alex actually spent $2 million on developing a product that never got launched. It's on the shelf. The idea was that it was an all-in-one broad software suite for the fitness and gym industry. And so in this video, we'll also be covering down the 3 reasons why this happened, why it's on the shelf, and how they could have avoided it. So where did the idea for Allen come from? So essentially they had external pressures, which was Facebook advertising cost, which was how they got their clients their leads, skyrocketed from 5 to 10 cents per lead to $1 to $5 per lead. And another problem that they were facing in their business was that only 1 out of the 8 leads that they're helping their clients get actually showed up for the appointments. And why was that the case? It's just because front desk staff and part-time employees, it's so hard that they'll actually put in the effort to nurture and care for the leads the same way that a business owner would. If they didn't solve this, their business would tank a lot, because with these two problems, they couldn't get the results that their clients were expecting. This problem came directly from a deep experience in their business that they saw with all of their clients. They also knew that their best clients had a 30 to 50% show up rate. All they needed to do was encode this system into the rest of their clients' businesses in order to get that lift. So what was the mistake that they made with their $2 million failed product in the ideation stage? Firstly, it was a point solution versus an everything solution. Their failed product, they tried to do everything. They tried to replace all the platforms that gym owners were using, but that's just too much of an ask. With a point solution, it's a much easier ask because all you're doing is solving one really painful problem, and it's a lot easier to build, a lot less risky. If they actually talk to their users, they'd figure out that switching all these platforms was the biggest cost for them. And so what this did was it allowed them to shape their positioning for this new product as an additive solution rather than a replacement system. So key points when you're coming up with your idea for a tech product is you want to make sure that this idea is coming from one repeated painful process of your business. You don't want it to come from a whiteboard where you're pulling at straws like most SaaS founders. Secondly is you don't want to build a new business. They weren't building something unique. They were just productizing a proven and existing process in their business through software. That's all that they were doing. The second phase of every tech product is once you have an idea, you need to prove that it'll work in the market. The point of validation is to de-risk by not spending months or 6 figures of your money on something that people won't actually pay for. If they did this stage properly, they could have saved $2 million of building their failed product. In validation, there's the strongest signal that you can get, which is if people actually put money down before your product even exists. This shows that your product is solving a problem that's so painful that people don't care if it exists yet. They want you to solve it as soon as possible. The weakest signal that you could get is just evidence that they struggle with this and you can quantify it. Every agency, especially one with 4,500 clients, has this on easy mode, and we'll get to exactly why. So I split validation into 2 parts. There's firstly desk validation, which you can do at your desk, and this one should be done within a couple hours, and External validation is when you talk to your users and you get external market data. For desk validation, I break it into a 4-part sequence where you can evaluate, is this even worth spending time on? So first up is your proximity to the problem. And essentially what I mean by this is, how deep are you in the problem space? The problem space, I'm going to use the analogy of Ford. Ford was so deep in the problem space because he knew that when he asked people, what do you want? And they said faster horses, he knew that they meant cars. If he wasn't in the space that he was in, he wouldn't understand this. And in the same way, Alex Hormozi, being so close to the problem that his clients were facing, that he was trying to solve, he was able to solve it super well. And so just imagine like how much more effort it is to try to reach all the way from where you are over here to everyone else. Like your prospects are just going to be so far away. It's going to be so much more expensive and it's going to take you a lot more time. And the chances of success are so much lower. The second one is quantifying the amount of time, money, or headspace that you're saving with your potential solution. So Alex Hormozi was seeing from his clients, the average was a 12.5 show up rate. He knew his best clients were getting 30 to 50% show up rate. All he had to do was encode this in software. This lift would allow them to make $100,000 more in revenue for his average client. If you're able to make someone $100,000 in additional revenue, you know you're onto something. The third one is going to be your competitors and alternatives. And for Alex Hormozi, who could compete with 4,500 sources of data? Who else had Alex's trust and reputation in the gym industry, right? They were untouchable. If anyone tried building the solution that they had planned for the gym industry, they wouldn't come close to Alex Hormozi because of the points of data that they had, the proximity to the problem, and just because Alex had so much trust and reputation in the industry that he was in. And the last step of your desk validation is you want to figure out, is this going to help me achieve the goals that I want to hit? And so there's two methods that we could use. The first method is using the SaaS value equation, which is basically a very simple equation that we can use to figure out how much can we charge and eventually how much is the market worth. The second method is to use your own agency's data. And so Gym Launch, having so much data, we can figure out how that was so advantageous for them. So the first step is you have to figure out how many potential customers are there in the market. In this case, it's about 150,000 for Gym Launch. So using the SaaS equation, which is basically the value you provide over usually 3 to 5, but knowing Alex, he'd probably just do 10. So let's use 10 as well. So it's essentially saying, if I'm going to provide you with $100,000 in additional revenue, I'm going to charge you a tenth of that, which is about $9,000 a year. So the addressable market, how much they could capture a year, is about $1.4 billion. But using the data that they had within Gym Launch, they had a better strategy, which was, okay, we know how many leads that they're bringing in per month. We know that if we could increase their show up rate with our system through the software to 30%, that they can make an additional 192 leads per month. And this allows them to figure out, okay, we could do it performance-based because that would allow us to make so much more money. So instead of $9,000 a year, they could charge $46,000 a year. And it's going to be a risk reversal by saying you're only going to pay for the appointments that we bring in. And so using their data, they're able to conclude that their market is about $7 billion. So now we can get into projecting the revenue, because this is what really matters. How much revenue can we make from this business? Using some pretty conservative numbers, in a very vertical niche like the gym industry, you can expect a 4% penetration rate in how long really depends, but I'm using year 3 as an example. And so 4% would give them 6,000 customers, estimated about $54 million in AR using the SaaS equation, the SaaS value equation. If they were to use their own data, they'd have a more accurate indicator of what they can make with a 4% penetration rate, which is 280 million. And so within year 5, if you get an 8% penetration, right, you just double all the numbers. With this step of the process, you want to make sure that using the most conservative numbers possible. If I were Alex Hormozi and I did these two methods, I would just scratch out this and just assume, okay, we could only charge 9,000 per year. And that way you're planning for the worst case scenario. And as a business owner, I'm pretty sure you know how you're already doing that. Their data allowed them to back their decision to go performance-based. And on the upside, it was a risk reversal as well. When you're building a product as part of your agency, there's also a lot of non-direct benefits. For example, Alan became part of Gym Launch's funnel and ecosystem. Now the marketing that they do for Alan is going to benefit Gym Launch because the brands are associated strongly, as well as it's going to increase the perceived value of Gym Launch because Gym Launch can go to a customer and say, hey, we can help you with all this and this. and we have a software tool that can make you $100,000 in additional revenue. Lastly, it also increases the lifetime value per client because you can cross-sell between the consultancy and the SaaS product. And also, just to add one more thing, is if they were to have a different strategy, which is common, is you can use this as part of your value ladder where you have your consulting tier at the very top and you use the SaaS as a lower barrier of entry, which allows people to enter your funnel without having to invest a lot of money. And so all the marketing they did for Alan would essentially be promoting Gym Launch, because eventually if someone's like, this software has helped me so much, they're going to be aware of Gym Launch because they're like, okay, this brand has provided me so much value. What else can they give me? Let's also touch on the mistakes that they made from their failed product. Realistically, desk validation wouldn't help them through this stage. If they did all the numbers, everything would add up. They were close to the problem. If they did the one-on-one economics, everything would add up. So what you actually need to do is just not skip external validation, because this is the part where you'll actually figure out, will people pay for this? The desk validation is just for an easy yes or no answer. So that gets us to external validation. Once again, external validation is talking to prospective users, figuring out in their own words, are they going to pay for this? Is this worth our time and worth building? So in Gym Launch's case, they were so well positioned that it wasn't even external validation, honestly. Like, imagine having 4,500 people that you could just talk to about a potential solution. They didn't have to go into the market to ask all these people and convince them of sharing their time. They had these people already in their network. And so this saved them tons of time instead of doing traditional market research. So one way of doing external validation is doing surveys, questionnaires, interviews, whatever you want. And in this case, because they had so many clients, a questionnaire was a pretty solid way of doing this. They're able to do that at scale. And so what they did was psychological priming. They kind of made the assumption that we know they need this. We're just going to get them ready for buying this. What it also did was confirm that they have these pains and these problems that the business Alan is going to solve. Yeah, so these forums led prospects to articulate their current reality, their frustrations, and goals in their own words, essentially saying, I have this problem. And what they would do is they presented Alan as their answer to their problems. And so they were ready to buy. This allowed them to line up a lot of early pilot users. I think they could have done it even better if they pre-sold it. But Alex Hormozi is the go on in sales, so I'm not sure exactly why he didn't. One speculation I have is that they were already 6 figures down the drain in building this. It's a lot less risky if you make money for your product before you actually build anything. And this is what I would recommend for anyone building a tech product. What we can learn from their $2 million failed product is if they just talk to their prospects, they would know that switching solutions for all of their things was too big of an ask. And so the key points of this section is validation is a process of gathering evidence that your idea is viable and it'll work in the market. We covered a 4-step desk validation framework to get a quick yes or no. Then we also covered you should speak to your potential users to understand the problem space even deeper and get further evidence that the problem is worth solving. Lastly, you don't want to build until you have undeniable evidence that this will work in the market. And for Alan's case, this was tons of questionnaires saying the biggest problem that they were having was the show-up rate. After you have the idea, after you've proven it'll work in the market, you're going to get to actually building it. I think this is where they went wrong. So they hired 32 offshore developers plus approximately 8 onshore team members. And this would lead to about a $1 to $2 million cost for building the first version. Tim Callis was the person, like I said, that led this. He had no background in tech products whatsoever. So his job was basically to systemize all of their domain knowledge of the system that they use for their best clients to get the 30 to 50% show up rate and put it into the software requirements required to build this product. Within 4 months, they were able to build an entire software platform effectively from the ground up, according to Tim. So what was Alan actually? It was just built as a lead nurturing platform to optimize the lead conversion rates. And these are the features that they had. So there's a lot of things that I would do differently. Starting off with hiring a tech partner, like a product partner, because Tim Callis, he had no experience in this whatsoever. There's actually a bit of a funny story behind that, but
With software, I knew how to acquire the customers. We knew how to build the team, but I'm not a code guy. And the mistake that I made when I was building Alan was that I did not have a technical co-founder. And so I had an outsourced development team, and that was a big mistake.
I think if they hired a tech partner or a product partner with experience doing all of this, they would have prevented all the mistakes that I'm about to mention below. I have a video covering why a tech partner is so important and how you can go about finding one in the video. I'll probably leave it in the description. So the first thing that I would do differently is just not innovate in the first version. They already had a proven system. Why would you spend tons of money delaying going to market to have a small lift? And what do I mean by a small lift? So they spent approximately 300 to 600,000 on the data science features. And these data science features were specifically to optimize message timing, optimize the content, and optimize conversion rates even further. But their system was already helping users go from a 12.5 to a 30% show up rate. That's 116% lift. That's like, why would they spend so much money in a small percentage lift of going from what their system already provenly can do to maybe a small fraction of an additional lift? So it gives them an additional 13 leads per month per client. So that's an additional 3.8 thousand for each customer. They would need an additional 1,000 to 2,000 customers before the data science features alone pays for itself. So there's no reason why they should have done this. In their failed product, they said we way over-engineered it. They stated that this was a mistake they made. And yet, I don't think they learned from it because they still way over-engineered this product. This is how I would have done it. I would have built a much smaller V1 in a much smaller time frame, go to market faster, deliver it to a smaller audience with more specific features. So you're not going to be able to serve everyone. Maybe you only integrate a specific calendar. And so what this does is it sets in motion your case studies so you can start getting results for your users. And you can start setting in motion the data gathering process that you can then use to optimize even further. So you have this V1, people start using it, you get feedback. What's working, what's not, what features are useful, what's not. And this allows you to build V2 based on all that feedback and the data that you already have from your V1. This approach is just so much more effective and efficient. There's no reason why they needed to innovate this much in the first version. The second reason is I think they were just doing too much. And this is kind of going off the first point as well. I use the example of the art styles. You have deconstructive and you have constructive. Basically, with deconstructive art, you might start off with something like an ice block. And to make your piece of art, you're going to chip off pieces of the ice block to eventually be left with your final piece. This is a human, if you couldn't tell. And so you're going to be chipping off all this ice over here. Whereas in constructive art, you have something empty and you're going to be putting items onto the canvas to end up with your final art piece. And the difference is that with deconstructive art, you're losing all of the resources that you're chipping off. And so this is going to be time and money into building a product, into building features that people don't end up using or things that you don't end up needing. Whereas with constructive art, you're going to build little by little, putting on only what's necessary. And lastly is they just did it with too many people. 40 people to build a first version, like, damn, I don't know if this is because the product was so complex internally or if it was because it was, 10 years ago. But there's unicorns today with 10 people teams. I don't think they needed 40 people to build this first project. I could have done this with 5 people alone. If they hired a tech partner, this tech partner would understand that you don't need 40 people to build this. You don't need to spend $2 million on the first version. The ROI could have been so much faster and higher if they just did this more effectively. And so the key points from this section is a good product partner will save you 6 to 7 figures and months to years of your time. A minimal vibe product is when you build the smallest thing possible and not an entire software platform like they did. And I use the art strategy to visualize that example. And then you have too many cooks spoil the broth. And this is just an engineering concept where if you have too many engineers on one thing, it just kind of ends up being ineffective, inefficient, and the product ends up being worse. And lastly is you want to be lean and iterative over big and chunky. You want to start with as small of a thing as possible, be smaller, leaner, and improve it as you go. So now you've built your first version, you're going to want to get your 10 evangelists. Or in this case, because they were so successful with this and because their consultancy business was so big, it was more like 0 to 100 within 40 to 75 days. How do they do this? It's the same way that every agency or consultancy will use to get their first 10 users, which is you leverage the trust and the built-in customers that you already have within your agency. Tim Callis has a really good approach to getting their users and building the product, which was, if we could not acquire another customer right now, what needs to be true about our product to succeed purely on referrals? What would have to change about what we deliver, how we deliver it, and the value people experience? And this is known as today as like the product-led marketing, where it's essentially your product will market itself because people share it, because they get the results that they're expecting. And so they got their first 100 users in a 3-phased approach. And it's not really too important. It's basically just use your network. So in the first phase, they went to their most engaged clients. They said, hey, we're launching this. We saw that you have this problem through the questionnaire that they did. And this is how they got their first 15 to 25 gyms. Then they also got an additional 35 to 45, but by just going to their team of gym launch and saying, hey, share this with your extended network. Then finally, by using the results that they've generated for their clients in phase 1 and phase 2, it was so easy to convince the rest of the people to say, hey, do you want to buy this? And it wasn't even buying this. It was, hey, do you want to use this to get more revenue? You only pay us per person that shows up. I want to highlight the word of mouth momentum that you have. Concept of your first 10 evangelists. I call them evangelists because they're natural advocates for your product. If you provide them the results that they're expecting, they will share this for you. And so in phase 3, they use the results that they got from phase 1 and 2 to essentially just start catapulting their scale. So by using the results, they were able to create evangelists because those people that were going from 12.5 to 30% show up rates, they were adding 100K in revenue. Why would you not share that to everyone you know? And so you essentially get your natural advocates, your evangelists. And word of mouth momentum is what starts the flywheel. You get the snowball effect. And organically, without spending any money for your customer acquisition, you can start scaling this product. The key points of getting your first 10, or in their case, 100 evangelists is you want to leverage your existing clients and relationships. This is super valuable. As an agency, you have to leverage this. This gives you a unique advantage compared to every other tech product. And this is number 2 of the agency to SaaS hack. You want to make it a no-brainer yes. You want to be providing so much value to these initial users that it's just, there's no reason they could say no. You're providing that much value. Thirdly is because you're making it a no-brainer yes by ideally tying your revenue to their customer success. We don't even care if we make money off these first 10 users. What the goal is to get results that we could use to share with the rest of the people. You get testimonials and you get evangelists, people that share the product for you. And this is really important. Do not scale until those first evangelists have results. Because if you start scaling before your evangelists have results, you're just going to have a bucket that's leaking more than it's filling. And so Alan was actually started a couple months before COVID. And so within a couple months, they had to pivot. And I'm not going to go too deep into this because it's not like you're going to have to worry about this. Hopefully not. So gym shut down. They needed to pivot and figure out, okay, what can we use this product for? And so they went down the white labeling path. And with the tech product that you're building as an agency, there's 2 options. You can sell to your existing clients, like Alan was at the very start, or you can sell it to competitors. If you're a marketing agency, you sell it to another marketing agency. So yeah, they're selling it to marketing agencies that were serving appointments-based small and medium-sized businesses. Their pitch was basically, you're great at running ads, but do they actually show up? This could help you. COVID actually played out really well for them, according to Tim, so great for them. So now we get into going to market, essentially scaling. How do we scale from our first 10 evangelists into getting the rest of their users? Unfortunately for Alan, there's not much data after the gym pivot, but we know that pre-COVID, they were charging on a per successful appointment, which was about 15 to 25. So it's very customer first, a product first marketing approach. And then after COVID, they did monthly tiers with a usage-based pricing. With their clients that they had 4,500 of, if they asked every single one of them, hey, do you know a marketing agency that could use this? My guess is they would get so many referrals from that would just start cascading again. Yeah, they had a very strong focus on word of mouth, as we saw from their pre-pivot. But knowing Alex, he probably had a touch of paid ads as well. Like, why wouldn't he? At this point, within 6 months, they reached $20 million in ARR, and the business was doing so well. And they had to figure out, okay, what are we going to do at this point? And every agency that builds a tech product, they're going to have to figure out, what do we do? Usually there's 3 options. You can keep them side by side, but you're going to have to dedicate at least one of the co-founders or one of the partners to be dedicated on it. Otherwise, it's just going to be a side project. And neither your consultancy or your agency or the tech product is going to do very well. The second option is you can sell the agency, the consultancy, and you can scale the tech product. And the third option is to sell the tech product and scale the agency. I don't know who would do this though, because they did. But usually with a software product, it's so much more scalable compared to an agency. But it's what they did. So they actually ended up selling Alan pretty soon after hitting $20 million a year. And they sold 75% of it. We don't know how much, but according to their revenue, we could approximate that it's worth about 120 million. So that's roughly what they sold it for. Then they sold the agency straight after, a couple months after, 66% for $46 million. And they transitioned from operators, from running businesses, to investors, which is what acquisitions.com is now. And so in this section, I want to highlight that every milestone of a business owner has different vehicles to reach the different milestones. An agency gets you your first few millions, and then you get into tech products, which allows you to scale to much higher, 8, 9 figures. And then you get into what Alex is doing now, which is an investor portfolio, right? Hopefully this case study was helpful. Hopefully it gives you an idea of how they actually use their consultancy to spin out a tech product and make $20 million in the first 6 months. If you like this video, leave a like, subscribe. I'm going to be making more content like this every week. And yeah, I'll see you guys soon.